What if I told you that everything will change when you stop being so available, not just to people, but to noise, to distraction, to the expectation of others, to the self that was never really yours to begin with? This is what happens when you stop being available and start being authentically you. Chapter 1, The Age of Hyper-Availability. In today's hyper-connected society, being available is often mistaken for being valuable. We're plugged in 24/7, answering texts, scrolling through social media, checking work emails late into the night. It's not just encouraged, it's expected. Availability has become a kind of modern virtue. The more reachable we are, the more useful, dependable, and virtuous we seem. But beneath the praise for our constant presence lies a subtle erosion, the slow disappearance of the self. Each ding of the phone, each late-night reply, each unspoken obligation to remain on steals a little more silence from us. Over time, these interruptions cease to feel like intrusions and instead become the default rhythm of our lives. But what are we losing in exchange for this supposed connection? We begin to fragment. Our attention splits, our inner world becomes crowded. The time that once belonged to contemplation, creativity, and rest is now colonized by notifications and the unending pull of other people's needs. Our sense of self, once rooted in quiet, now floats, untethered, distractive, reactive. Carl Jung warned of this danger. He understood that vitality comes not from overextension, but from inner preservation. To truly live, we must carve out space to be, not just to respond. When we constantly give ourselves away, piece by piece, we don't collapse all at once, we slowly dissolve. To stop being constantly available is not an act of selfishness, it's an act of sacred rebellion. It's the decision to reclaim your presence, not as a resource to be drained, but as a life to be lived. You're not abandoning others, you're finally returning to yourself. Chapter 2, The Journey Inward, Individuation and the True Self. Carl Jung's concept of individuation is not just a psychological idea, it's a sacred calling. It's the lifelong process of becoming whole, not by adding more to ourselves, but by uncovering what has always been there beneath the surface. Unlike the quick fixes offered by modern self-help culture, individuation demands depth. It asks us to peel back the layers we've built to survive in a world of roles and expectations. From early childhood, we learn to adapt. We learn to perform, to please, to fit in. We become the obedient student, the agreeable friend, the reliable coworker. And while these roles help us navigate society, they also distance us from the truth of who we are. Over time, we begin to confuse the mask with the face. We forget that the persona, the version of ourselves curated for the world, is not the self. Jung believed the self with a capital S is a deep inner reality, not something we invent, but something we recover. It speaks not in the language of performance, but in the quiet tones of intuition, dream, and symbol. This voice is soft, and it can't be heard above the noise of perpetual engagement. To walk the path of individuation, you must first slow down. You must risk becoming unfamiliar to others in order to become known to yourself. This often means stepping back from overcommitment, from unnecessary obligations, from the need to be constantly affirmed. This is not an act of retreat, but an act of remembering. You begin to ask essential questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I love, not because it's praised, but because it stirs something true in me? What do I believe in, even if it sets me apart? The journey inward is not linear, it's messy, sacred, and often uncomfortable, but it's the only path that leads to authenticity. And in a world obsessed with appearances, authenticity is a quiet revolution. Chapter 3, The Shadow, Reclaiming the Forgotten Self. One of Carl Jung's most transformative ideas is also one of his most unsettling, the shadow. It is the unseen part of ourselves, the aspects we've hidden, rejected, or been shamed into silence. It contains the impulses we've been told are too much, too dark, or too unacceptable. But paradoxically, it also holds the very power we need to become whole. The shadow is not a villain. It's not the enemy. It's the guardian of your unlived life. We all carry a shadow. It might be filled with rage we weren't allowed to express, desires we were told were sinful, ambition we were taught to repress. These aren't flaws. They are energies exiled for survival. Perhaps as children we sensed that certain emotions were dangerous, so we buried them. Perhaps we learned that love came with conditions, and so we cut off the parts that didn't fit. And though these parts were cast out, they never left us. They simply went underground. In solitude and silence, the shadow begins to stir. And this is why so many people avoid being alone. Not because they dislike silence, but because silence reveals. It strips away distraction and shines a light on what we've ignored. The anger we've swallowed. The grief we never voiced. The dreams we portrayed. Jung wrote, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. That effort is the journey inward, the willingness to look at yourself without flinching, to say, yes, that's mine too." This is not about indulging the shadow, it's about integrating it, giving it a voice, letting it inform you rather than control you. When we deny the shadow, it emerges unconsciously in sabotaging behaviors, in relationships that implode, in anxiety with no name. But when we acknowledge it, we reclaim our energy, we gain insight, we grow teeth not to harm, but to protect. To stop being constantly available is to create sacred space for this process. It is to say, I am ready to meet all of me, not just the polished parts. And in doing so, you begin to stitch together the fragments of your soul. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Chapter 4. Solitude is not isolation, it's a rite of passage. We've been taught to fear solitude. In a society that prizes productivity and social visibility, being alone is often viewed as a failure. But Jung knew otherwise. He saw solitude not as loneliness, but as a necessary phase of psychological and spiritual development. In solitude, we are forced to drop the masks. There's no one to impress, no audience to perform for. What's left is the raw, unfiltered self, the one most of us spend our lives avoiding. And yet, it's only here, in this quiet, uncurated space, that deep transformation becomes possible. Solitude is where you begin to discern between your authentic voice and the noise of conditioning. It's where the insights come, the realizations that can't emerge in constant distraction. The truth is, many people stay busy because they're afraid of what they'll find in silence. That silence is the doorway to everything real. When you begin to intentionally step away, when you turn off the phone, decline the invite, create sacred space for reflection, you're not withdrawing from life. You're stepping into a deeper relationship with it. You're cultivating presence, intention, and clarity. The rite of passage is not easy. It can be painful to confront what you've been avoiding. But as you move through it, something begins to shift. You feel more grounded, more centered, more you. This is the gift of chosen solitude. Not separation, but self-reclamation. Chapter 5, The Art of Saying No and the Courage to Disappoint. If solitude is the sanctuary, then boundaries are the walls that protect it. And perhaps the most powerful, uncomfortable, and liberating boundary we can set is a single word: no. We are taught from a young age that no is impolite, that it disrupts harmony, that it makes people uncomfortable. So we soften it, avoid it, disguise it. We say maybe when we mean never. We say sure, while something inside us silently pleads for rest. Over time, this pattern of self-abandonment becomes second nature. We don't even recognize we're doing it. We just feel tired, resentful, lost. But Carl Jung reminded us that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires courage, and part of that courage is disappointing others. To say no is to confront a fear that many of us carry, the fear of no longer being liked, needed, or praised. But here's the truth. If your sense of worth depends on how useful, compliant, or available you are, then your worth is not really yours. It belongs to whoever benefits from your exhaustion. Disappointment is inevitable when you begin to honor yourself. Someone will always want more than you can give. Someone will always feel entitled to your time, your help, your energy. But the presence of disappointment doesn't mean you're doing harm. It often means you're finally doing what's healthy. When you begin to say no, you're not just rejecting requests. You're making room for what truly matters. You're filtering your life through the lens of integrity rather than obligation. You are saying, my energy's finite. My time is sacred. I will no longer trade them for fleeting approval. And yes, it will be uncomfortable at first. People may push back. Guilt may rise. Old patterns may scream. But stay with it. Hold your ground, because something else begins to happen too. Your life starts to align. You begin to notice who respects your boundaries and who resents them. You begin to feel less drained and more directed. Your yes becomes more meaningful because it's no longer automatic. It's intentional. It comes from choice, not coercion. Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become that person if you're always shape-shifting for others. You must always be willing to say no to tasks, to roles, to relationships that require you to shrink or fragment yourself. And slowly, the fear of disappointing others is replaced with a deeper fear. What if I disappoint myself by continuing to live inauthentically? That's the question that changes everything. Chapter 6, The Return of Inner Richness. When you reclaim your time from the outer world, you discover a world inside you that is vast, beautiful, and alive. The imagination reawakens. Dreams become more vivid. Emotions that were once buried begin to flow. This is the return to the inner life, a life that modern society often tells us to ignore. Carl Jung emphasized the symbolic nature of the psyche. He believed that our unconscious communicates in stories, dreams, images, and archetypes. When you begin to create space for this inner dialogue, you gain access to parts of yourself that are infinitely wise, intuitive, and deeply creative. This is where real insight is born, not from external advice, but from your own depths. You begin to understand your patterns, your wounds, your desires. You begin to heal, not because someone told you to, but because you finally made space for your soul to speak. This return to inner richness is not a one-time event. It's a practice, a way of being. And once you've experienced it, the idea of being constantly available again feels absurd. Why would you trade gold for dust? Why would you sacrifice your wholeness for a few fleeting moments of approval? You begin to see your life is not meant to be consumed by others. It's meant to be lived deeply and truly by you. Chapter 7, Integration, Becoming the Whole Self. Eventually, something powerful happens. As you stop being pulled in every direction, you begin to unify. The scattered parts of you, the shadow, the wounded inner child, the silenced voice begin to come together. What emerges is not perfection, but wholeness. Jung believed that the goal of life was not to be good, but to be real. Not to be flawless, but to be whole. This wholeness is what brings peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the peace that comes from alignment. You're no longer fragmented, no longer pretending. You have nothing left to prove. You are simply yourself. Free, unapologetically, fully. This is integration. This is freedom. And the irony is, the less available you become to the wrong things, the more present you become to the right ones. Life feels more vivid. Relationships feel more authentic. You're not just surviving, you're finally living. So I ask you, what are you making yourself available to? Are you available to chaos or to clarity? Are you available to validation or to vision? Are you available to exhaustion or to evolution? Carl Jung once said, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. He who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. If you're ready to awaken, begin by making yourself unavailable to everything that takes you away from yourself. You're not here to be everything to everyone. You're here to be someone to yourself. And once you choose that path, everything will change.